I am pleased to speak. I'm pleased to introduce our regular host, Jay Bozo, and he will be telling us more about the Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you. I'm glad to be on this side of the agenda this week. This is going to be a fun presentation, and I'll get into it in just a second. We, as Adnan said, in these presentations, we've been covering a lot of AI technologies lately, and we are going to cover them for a couple of more weeks and then shift back to some traditional HPC technologies, some processor technologies, some additional things. But I'm very happy to be talking to you today about Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform. I do want to remind you to register for next week's presentation. A global thought leader, Ian Foster, is going to talk about how to use agents for scientific and technical applications and workflows. So what I talk about today will be a set of Google technologies, and as always, we try to alternate those with general thought leader best practices, vision talks, etc. So I really hope you'll tune in for Ian Foster's presentation next week. A lot of what we talk about today can be a technology you use to implement the kinds of things that Ian is going to talk about next week. Let me share my presentation here. Here we go. So my presentation for this week, let's put in, is about Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform. And my objectives for today, there are really three main ones. I want to ensure people know what agents are and why they're useful, but also a bit risky. I want to discuss how Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform makes them easier to make and more useful and addresses some of the risks. And I want to share how to learn more and get, I'm supposed to get more information. So what are not objectives for today, but coming soon, are the SciTech context that I just talked about for next week and the hands-on training that's coming up in October. So stay tuned for that. But first, a poll. And here's where we're going to use Meetmojis. Please just use them one per answer so that I can get a better feel for how many people fall into each category. All right. At the very top, how many people are developing AI agents already? Use a sparkle heart if you are, and it's fine if you're not. Use a sparkle heart if you are. So I see several people developing them already. Okay. How many people here are using AI agents daily? Use a thumbs up for that if you're using AI agents daily. Lots. Good. Okay. So how many people know what agents are technically, but are not yet using them? Use the confetti horn for that. If you sort of know what they are, but you're interested in learning more about how to use them, and great. All right. A lot in that bin. That's what I expected for today. And how many people are planning to learn more about agents and use and develop them soon? That could be any of you, since even experts want to lose more. So use the applause for that one if you're planning on doing more with them in the coming weeks. Great. All right. So with that, I'm going to do a real quick accelerated intro to AI agents before I jump into Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform. My Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform content is long, so this is probably going to be one of those two-part presentations since we like to let everybody out on time, but we'll get through as much of that as we can. First, though, let me just make a reminder. Agents are not robotic process automation. Just curious, hit the plus sign if you've heard of RPA before. I know we have a mix of ages and experience levels on this crowd. Okay, a lot of folks know what RPA is. RPA is deterministic. It's, put crudely, it's if then else. It's explicit. You can predict what's going to happen based on the input. You can predict what the code is going to do. And much of our code in life is explicit code. But one of the powerful things about LLMs and generative AI and machine learning methods in general is that it can infer judgments, predictions, classifications, or generate text, images, sound based on prompts or based on initial conditions that may not be exactly in the training data, but lead it to infer what it should do next. So AI agents are reasoning based, unlike RPA, which is deterministic. Now, AI agents, you can think of them as their anatomy as being three parts. They have a brain, and that is the model. Then they have hands and memory. The memory is important because you need to retain state of what the brain is doing with the hands. Now, as you all know, the brain is the LLM. And everybody on this call, I'm sure, is familiar with the fact that you kick off these outputs with a prompt, And then you start getting text back, and that goes into a context window, and you can get more text back and so on. Well, in agents, there's a react framework, a reason and act framework, where the brain interprets something, comes up with an action. It uses the hands, that we'll talk about the hands in a second, to make that action. It observes what happens and it repeats. So this reason plus act or react framework is what makes agents so powerful. The fact that they are connected by their hands to tools, not just putting out tokens. So this in and of itself is useful for generating something, but doing something with what is generated requires interfacing with tools and observing the results of what happens when you use that tool. And that's what makes this framework so powerful. Now, probably everybody here has heard of Model Context Protocol, since so many of you said you had at least heard of agents. Model Context Protocol is the USB-C port of AI agents. It is the rapidly agreed upon standard that enables agents to talk to tools. So an agent can talk to BigQuery or Jira or Workday or your email client or your Slack client or your calendar or many other things, and it does that through MCP. So MCP you can think of as the hands that touch the different tools. The LLM is the brain that is telling it what to do with those tools and then observing what is done with those tools. Now, of course, state management is important as well. So you have to have that memory, because you're gathering data, you're performing an analysis on what happened, you're reporting back, and that's part of your data gathering to determine what to do next in that React framework. So again, the LLM generates output. An agent based around an LLM can do much more because of the hands and the memory. It can generate output that is fed into a tool, makes the tool take actions, observes the actions of the tool, and reasons what to do next. Of course, with memory, there's short-term and long-term memory. The short-term memory is generally the session context window. That's very important because every agent is going to have its own context window. At Google, we're very proud that our context window has been 2 million tokens for a long time. That is a tremendous amount of context to be that is stored in short-term memory. But you can also store things in long-term memory with vector and graph databases, so that these agents can be effectively stateless, pick up where they left off, etc. Now, agents are great, and we're going to talk about tools for building agents in just a second, but you don't always want to use agents. It's all the rage right now, just as generative AI is. But just as sometimes a SQL database is what you want, not a generative AI system, sometimes RPA or an explicit method is what you want, not an agent. So 3 times you may not want agents. If you have high latency requirements, which really means you have low latency requirements are of high priority. You need sub-second responses. We've all seen chatbots spit out tokens very slowly, really, by computing standards. So if you have if you require low latency, if that's a high priority, then agents may not be the right thing for you. Also, if you need strictly deterministic linear workflows, if you need to remove any probability, any variability, any randomness from the outcome, you might want to use agents. And if you're cost sensitive to microtransactions, we all know that these tokens have a computational cost behind the scenes. You're all probably, actually, I'm curious, how many of you are not yet paying for tokens? And that means either personally or through you're probably through an institutional or school account. How many are not paying yet? Madavan, I find it hard to believe you're not paying for tokens through one of your accounts yet. Most people are paying as consumers individually, or they're working in their corporate accounts for which they're using Gemini Enterprise or some other solution for which tokens are being paid for you by your IT department. Quick note here, there's a God agent problem. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Linux and Unix and the mindset there of building small tools that work really well and then developing ways of those high-performing special purpose tools to work together to perform aggregate things. Scripts is a big part of this. In Unix and Linux, we've made scripts and pipes on the command line to piece together these different special, sole purpose functions to do more macro kinds of things. Same principle goes in agents. You don't want to build God agents. You want to build special purpose agents. There's a couple of reasons for that. It's much harder to debug a God agent, just like it's much harder to debug a large program that has no subprograms in it. It can also lead to context dilution. The God agent would have one context window, but 50 small agents managing 50 tools on their own each has their own context window, and it's going to be more accurate. So you can build micro agent architectures with these where there's a single responsibility for each agent, and you give them all a purpose. Yes, they're all using an LLM or some model as the brain, but they're given different roles, different skills, and we're going to talk about that coming up. By giving them different prompts and different skills, they can take on different roles, and that's a very powerful thing as well. And so, of course, that leads to the A2A protocol. Just as MCP is how a single agent talks to a single tool, A2A is how agents talk to each other. And we've gone over all of this a couple of months ago here in this community. So I'm reviewing really quickly, but I want you to remember MCP for agents talking to tools and A2A for agents talking to other agents. And using A2A, you can come up with different topologies that may make sense. Sometimes you have a very linear workflow of agents to agents. That doesn't make it deterministic because, again, you're using LLMs, not RPA. But it does at least make the progression predictable. Sometimes you're going to do things with hierarchical agents. You might have one orchestrator agent, like in an OpenClaw system, that is building other agents, sub-agents as it needs to, but it's communicating with the sub-agents, not you. There's also times where a swarm model and all-to-all makes sense. This is the bane of communications in parallel computing when all nodes are communicating with all nodes, but sometimes that is what makes sense when it's not about maximizing performance and trying to get linear increases in performance with number of nodes. It's just trying to make a lot of distributed things function and work together. You could imagine smart city implementation might be a good example of when a swarm model might make sense. And of course, there's always the important thing to remember. We can automate a lot of things with agents, but you generally want a human in the loop pause to do this. Just curious, how many of you have configured an agent to read your emails each morning and draft responses for you to review before they go out? Hit the thumbs up if you've done that. Oh, just a few people have done that. Oh, okay, we're seeing some more. I encourage all of you to try that, but introduce the human in the loop pause. Make sure that it is putting them in your drafts folder for you to review. Just curious, how many of you are having it automatically reply for you without you ever seeing the draft? I'm going to ask you to hit the thumbs down on that, and that's going to tell you what I think about that, but maybe you're better at the prompt than I am. Oh, Michelle. Very gutsy. Utara. All right. I want to talk to both of you later about your experiences with automated email replies and whether it's been a problem or not. In certain configurations and certain limited scopes of emails for certain inboxes, that can be highly useful and remove the human in the loop display. For your general inbox, that of course can be problematic. There's some real world agentic tools in the wild, and we're about to talk about one of them. You've probably heard of Claude Code, OpenAI Codex. Maybe you've heard of Gemini CLI, or now we have anti-gravity, maybe Claude Cowork and Gemini Workspace Intelligence for the non-coding, but still workspace intelligence kinds of things, analyzing all your docs and slides. How many of you are using OpenClaw, NemoClaw, Hermes, or something like that? Thumbs up if you're using one of those, please. Oh, Adnan. Okay, there we go. And Jerry gave a thumbs down, so I think that means he's definitely not using them. I have a lot of friends using OpenClaw, one using NemoClaw, and some exploring Hermes. How many of you have experimented with Gemini Spark yet? We're going to have a presentation on that next month, I think, but how many of you have started experimenting with Gemini Spark on your Google accounts? Good, thank you, Michelle. I look, and we may have you guys present in a couple of months if you're interested. Gemini Spark is our enterprise grade way of managing a personal agent system for you. And we actually are going to reference that coming up. And how many of you have used deep research mode in Gemini? And no shame if you haven't. because we managed to bury it under a double nested menu system in the chatbot interface. That was not me or Adnan making that decision, or Mary. I keep meaning to put a suggestion, and I think that deserves a little higher profile than that. Gemini Deep Research is an agentic generative AI tool buried under that interface, but rather than giving you a quick answer of tokens, it will do extensive research, including web searches, information synthesis, etc., using agents with defined roles, and prepare a great report for you. So when you really need to understand something in detail with a minimal chance of any errors or contradictions, Deep Research is a great tool. All right, so now we're into the heart of this. Why use Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform? Well, the answer falls out of the introductory slides. We all know that the brains of these are LLMs, and we all know that LLMs can hallucinate. Now, they hallucinate much less than when they were launched just under 4 years ago. Google and OpenAI and Anthropic, we've all built lots of safeguards in. All of these chatbot interfaces to these backend LLMs can also do searches on the web and things like that to make sure that they're looking at more recent information, that they're looking for inconsistencies, etc. So even the basic chatbot interfaces have gotten much better at giving you accurate, useful answers. But agentic systems can go way beyond that, because you can have multiple agents searching for information and comparing information. You can have agents play the role of fact checker, which is a great role for agents to play to ensure that the first agent doesn't give you a hallucination. And so agents can play roles as defined by prompts and skills and system instructions. And this is a very important capability. And then you can use many, many agents playing many different roles to greatly increase the quality of the output, the quality of decisions based upon that output, and minimize the chance for errors. Now, before I get into why Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform, I do have a few marketing slides for you. You can tell they're marketing because I am not good at making attractive slides, and Google is really good at it. So I need to say a little bit about why Google Cloud, because Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform is built on the strengths of Google Cloud itself. Part of that strength is we are the full stack AI company. There are companies that have clouds that run AI. There are companies that develop AI that you can use on other clouds or locally. We do all of it, from the cloud infrastructure, including our own purpose-built TPUs in that infrastructure, as well as the latest NVIDIA GPUs in that infrastructure, all the way up through the software stack and the applications built on top of that. Google also embraces hybrid multi-cloud. We know that you're going to be doing things on-prem. We know that there will be edge computing. We know that many customers need to use multiple clouds. So we've embraced the fact that it's a multi-cloud world, and we've tried to make our technologies as interoperable as possible to make your lives easier. And most of all, like other hyperscalers, security issues, all the hyperscalers have tremendous security teams. And in fact, you may have seen about a huge Google acquisition of Wiz.io last year, one of the biggest tech acquisitions ever, not the largest, but one of the largest. And it was a security firm. That's what they did. It was a security company. And we bought them in part to make sure that we could really deliver a secure platform, in particular for the age of agentic AI. Not advanced. Here we go. So we really are the first party solutions across the entire stack. That is what Google's really known for. There's a lot of other advantages to Gemini Enterprise overall, from Gemini Enterprise Workspace and many other features in it. So Gemini Enterprise licenses are real common at universities, labs, and companies around the country. And this is important. The Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform is important because everybody is building agents, but we really need to think bigger about this, not just building special purpose agents for managing an individual's inbox and calendar, but imagining agents that are autonomous and can work in the background and do things that normally a person with human cognitive skills would have been required to do, but probably would get tired and bored of some of the tasks that need to be done behind the scenes to make a business run or a scientific experiment run or whatnot. Coding can be tiring. Analyzing the same kinds of outputs from an instrument can be tiring. Preparing the same kinds of business reports can be toil and tiresome, and that can also lead to errors as well. And it takes a while, and it takes the cost of a human trained person to do that, but that person can do so much more than just that. So when you can offload some of that cognitive work to agents at scale, you can leverage your talented employees for their higher level cognitive abilities, for things that are difficult to get machine learning AI to do, but humans do so well. So making sure these agents can operate within a complex business system or lab environment or a research environment is difficult. You really need to solve that production gap issue, make sure these things are production worthy. And this, by the way, is much harder than an explicit code with deterministic outputs. Think about that. And I'm sure many of you have, but writing test cases for deterministic codes is far more straightforward than writing test cases for generative AI based applications, for which there's a probability factor. They're making decisions based on data that wasn't exactly in the training set, and they're inferring probabilistically what to do based on that. So you've got a reasoning bearer, and of course you've got an integration maze, and underlying all of that is the security and governance across all efforts. Because when it's not an explicit deterministic method, and even those are not always bulletproof due to cyber attacks, penetrations, and so on. Once it's reasoning based and there's some probabilities about the decisions it's going to make, you have a different level of cybersecurity you need there. So the real goal here is to achieve high quality business outcomes, quality, integration, trust, and innovation. We all want that, but trying to do it with agents represents a new level of complexity in development, in scaling, in testing, in optimizing, and in security. So the Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform tries to address that in a 4-pillar approach. One, making it easier for everybody to build robust, effective agents. We're going to talk about that next. Build is important, and we really want everybody in a company to be able to do it, not just the senior developers. It's important that anyone in your enterprise, in your lab, in your university, in your company, that can recognize work that can be automated and made quicker and probably more reliable, understands how to build agents to take that on. Then scaling it becomes important, because many of us work for organizations or institutions, not with 1 or 5 or 10 people, but with 100 or 1,000 or 100,000 or more. Furthermore, those of us working for small entities still need agents to scale to handle very large customer query levels and scales. Governing is hugely important. You need to take care of security, identity management, registering the right versions of agents, and making sure that tested, secure agents are the ones that everybody has access to. And then, of course, you want to optimize. And this becomes incredibly important because we already talked about it in the opening. The bandwidth, if you will, of token generation is not like the floating point operation performance of CPUs and GPUs. And so it's really important to optimize their performance, optimize away the chances for errors, and to optimize the capabilities they have to ensure they're doing what you intended them to do and are not veering outside of that. And again, you might use other agents to check and monitor processes as well, but it becomes very important to optimize that for cost reasons, for time reasons, etc. So I'm going to show this video before I go on, and let's make sure the volume is playing. Let's see. Mary, I might need your help playing this video. Hold on. Here we go.
Using AI for enterprise shouldn't be a lot of work. Let AI agents do the work. Introducing Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform. The best
is the audio coming
AI
through?
For developers.
Thumbs up if it is.
Build.
Yes, good.
From the low-code visual interface of the new Agent Studio to the code-first logic of the upgraded Agent Development Kit, we've simplified the entire lifecycle with AI-native coding capabilities to help you ship production-grade agents faster. Scale. With agent runtime, sub-second cold starts mean no workload is too heavy, and long-running execution windows mean no task is too complex. Govern. Centralized control with agent identity, agent registry, and agent gateway, ensuring every agent has a trackable identity and operates within secure, enterprise-grade guardrails. Optimize. With agent simulation, agent evaluation, and agent observability, you have a real-time lens into agent reasoning with full execution traces to ensure your agents always hit their goals. Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform, the new standard for the agentic era.
So I thought that was a great video, one of the best I've seen us do at quickly conveying a comprehensive platform with a huge number of capabilities in a short video. You can see that it built on those 4 pillars of build, scale, govern, and optimize. All 4 of those are important pillars to take agents beyond doing simple individual things, which doesn't scale very well if everybody in a large company is building all of their own individual agents, to making them robust, making them effective, registering them, making them available to everybody in the enterprise, and making sure that everybody can use them to scale out efforts across the entire enterprise. Now, we talked in the opening about the brains are the LLM. And actually, I said more specifically, the LLM or other generative AI model. So of course, in Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform, we have a variety of models that you can use because the world's data is not all text. There is plenty of text, but there's also image, video, audio, etc. And so we have a large number of models for different unstructured data types, for converting between different unstructured data types. All of those are available, of course, in Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform, but not just those. We still have the model garden from the Vertex model garden that is part of the Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform now. And so we have our own Google models. We also have third-party models. We're a great partner with Anthropic, for example. And so we launched their models on Google Compute Platform very quickly after they come out. You can see Mistral in that box as well. And we also have open weights models in there as well. So again, open, standards, interoperable. These are all principles that are very important, and they permeate the Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform as well through the number of models that we make available for different things. And so here's a big picture look at the Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform. And this is what I think the video did so well. There are these 4 pillars, but looking at this graphic, you can see a large number of components in some of these boxes. Now, the build has the largest number of components here because it has to have the different ways of making agents, from Agent Studio, the no-code or low-code way, up through Agent Development Kit, the very intensive high-code way to do it, plus Agent Garden for leveraging agents that we've already provided. So there's a lot in that build section as well. But there's also key technologies and services in Scale, Govern, and Optimize to help you go beyond just building agents, to help you and your enterprise scale them out, manage them well, and make them better over time. So Agent Platform is at the heart of a larger Google ecosystem here. So again, everything in this blue box here is now in the dark blue box here. Below that is our foundation, which includes the AI hypercomputer, the Google Cloud Platform resources that are optimized for training models, running agentic applications, high throughput inferencing, and so on. That's all part of this underlying infrastructure we have there. We also have this agentic data cloud, which is a wonderful cross-cloud or inter-cloud interoperability data cloud that allows you to use models and agents across clouds, and agentic defense, a set of cybersecurity capabilities there. So underpinning the agent platform is the AI hypercomputer, the agentic data cloud, and agentic defense technologies. But on top of that, you all will be building applications and solutions. Now, while this session today in the GCACC is Google specific, as always, we like to mention that it's a large ecosystem out there, and we work with partners that can interoperate with this enterprise agent platform. And of course, there are also competitors to this platform as well. And we make sure that we're as interoperable as we can be when you are using one of those technologies as well. Discussing that in more detail is beyond the scope of this 40-minute presentation, but I wanted you to be aware that that is out there. Now, a lot of the interface is through the Gemini Enterprise app. A lot of you, probably everybody on this call, has used the Gemini chatbot in a non-enterprise way, just by going to gemini.google.com. So I assume everybody on this call has probably used that before. But of course, if your institution or corporation has Gemini Enterprise, you're using a higher level of that web interface to that, the Gemini Enterprise app. And it becomes the front door to AI in the workplace. And it has more capabilities built into it than the standard Gemini chatbot that you see. So some of these capabilities are shown on this graph and this image here. And I apologize that it's an eye chart, but again, that tells you something about it. There are a tremendous number of capabilities in the agent platform, which is on the bottom in this diagram. And then the app exposes you both the administrator, and you can see a dashed line box around those capabilities, and for the employees, another dashed line box around these capabilities. It maintains a knowledge graph and context. It maintains the MCP and A-to-A connections to tools and agents that we talked about in the beginning of this presentation. But this Gemini Enterprise app becomes your interface for many purposes to the agent platform. Now, how do we build agents? And we're probably going to stop part one of this presentation after build and have a second part on scale, govern, and optimize. I might flip through those real quickly, but let's talk about build, because Adnan talked about anti-gravity recently. We've talked about some of the technologies in this section in previous sessions. So I want to show you how all that comes together here. So first, as I said, we have Gemini models on the Gemini Enterprise app. The latest one we have is Gemini 3.6 Flash. That's now in GA. Gemini 3.5 Pro was announced in April as coming soon. It could be any day. I promise you, I don't have any information on that. It could be weeks from now, but it is coming soon. Our 3.1 Pro model is out, and when that was released in November last year, it skyrocketed to the top of most benchmark tests. The 3.6 Flash model is our faster, lower cost model. There are times when you want a Pro model, but for many agents, the Flash model is what you want. It will make your agents more responsive and have equivalent results. There are times when you need a Pro model for deep, complex reasoning, but if you're constructing agents carefully to have specific purposes and the kinds of information they're acting on is relatively well scoped, then almost certainly a Flash model is going to give you equivalent capabilities, faster performance, and lower token costs for that. So this is one of those things in the AI era that people need to know. Different models have different capabilities, costs, run times, etc. Google provides a great tool for experimenting with these, aistudio.google.com. It's a free tool. We've talked about it before in GCACC. I hope, how many of you have played with AI Studio and tested different models, different system instructions, different temperature values for models, tuned prompts, saved prompts, etc.? Okay, good. I'm seeing a number of people that have done that. That's great. That makes me feel like this community of practice is working, and we've got people trying out some of these technologies. I think our AI Studio is relatively unique in the degree of hands-on fine-grained control it gives you in experimenting with these technologies. Now, Spark is a capability that all of you can use today in a Pro plan or an Ultra plan. It doesn't exist in our free plan yet, but it also exists in the Enterprise app. And this is the equivalent of, it's sort of like OpenClaw, except, well, one, it will run when your laptop lid is closed because it's running in the cloud. And two, it has all of Google's security built into it. If you have not started using Gemini Spark yet, I really encourage you to do a little bit of homework and try this. create an agent in Gemini Spark, and actually ask Gemini how to do it. Create an agent in Gemini Spark that scans all of your emails each day and scans your calendar appointments and makes you a daily brief. Now, turns out the Gemini app can do this for you, but you can do it for yourself and give more specific instructions. Like, if I get an email from my mom, definitely flag it as high alert and put some time on my calendar for responding to it. I don't know why I picked that example, because my mom would never send me email. She still calls. She doesn't even text. But you get the gist of what I'm saying. There are things that you can do on your own with the Gemini, with Spark. And you don't even need to be in an enterprise plan to do it, as long as you're in a paid plan like AI Pro or AI Ultra. It can change the way you manage all of your incoming Gmails, calendar appointments, workspace docs, et cetera, and really powerful capability. But in enterprise, it takes on even more capabilities. How many of you are at companies or institutions that have Gemini Enterprise licenses right now? Hit the plus sign. All right. Okay, good. Good number. Happy to see that. You all will have access to this right now, and I encourage you to try it. And if you do not have access to it through an enterprise plan, again, you can get access to Spark through a personal plan. So it can push updates to your inbox, manage your workforce of agents via a unified command center. This becomes a great way for you to manage the agents that you're responsible for and that you're using on a regular basis. Now, how do you create these agents? I just told you about an interface to them. Well, one way is Agent Studio. And you saw in that video that it was a GUI way of creating these. And you could create different agents for different roles and connect them in different topologies, like I showed you earlier in the slides in this presentation. So you can create, test, and publish agents and workflows of agents without even writing code. You can use natural language and UI-based editing. You can use predictive and deterministic logic. Now, the LLM is always going to be probabilistic, but you can use deterministic logic in which agent calls which agent. So you have some deterministic control in the workflow part of it. You can have triggers like run on schedules, run when you get a chat or an email, or based on different connector actions from other agents. You can embed human oversight in to review and provide input, which is probably really good if you're doing something with money or personal communications, until you are really sure that it is well tuned and well tested. And you can customize. This is a really powerful and easy to use capability, Agent Studio. On the other hand, how many of you are developers? Hit the plus sign if you are a developer. All right, I'm expecting the pluses to blow up here any second, and there they go. We have a lot of developers in the audience, which is great. Agent SDK is how you build, customize, and integrate advanced agent capabilities programmatically. So first-class developer tools, universal connectivity, local debugging and evaluation. The Agent SDK is really important. And so anti-gravity becomes a part of this spectrum of tools as well. So you can think of Agent Studio as visual and low code. You can think of Agent Development Kit, ADK, as a code-first platform. And then anti-gravity, which Adnan has shown you in 2 different presentations, can become your cohesive development environment plus runtime and UX. So all of these tools have their place in our ecosystem. Now, one last question for you. How many of you are familiar with skills? There we go. Use any symbol you want for this one. There we go. Sparkle hearts, thumbs ups, etc. Skills invoke specific tasks in standard and consistent ways. You can kind of, oh, someone doesn't like skills maybe. You can think of them as the middle ground between an agent and a repetitive prompt. I might have reversed that. A repeated prompt and an agent. You can pull in deep expertise when the task requires it without cluttering the model's reasoning. It's scalable across users. So skills become really important. And then when you put it all together, skills are your building blocks, Agent Studio for visual and low code, Agent Development Kit for code first platform, and then your command center is anti-gravity. And with that, I'm actually going to stop here, and we'll do a part 2 on scale, govern, and optimize, probably in October, when we will also bring you, per your requests in the last few sessions, online training classes as well. So with that, I'll stop presenting there, Adnan, and we can take a few questions.
Yeah, let's take a few questions. Thank you very much, Jay. Let's give Jay a round of applause for an excellent presentation. There's always things I learn that I thought I knew that you somehow miss. So thanks for pointing those out, Jay. All right.
I'm with you on that. I feel like we're changing and adding features every week in this era of AI innovation, and everybody is. So every week I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. And usually someone says, oh, yeah, it didn't exist last week.
So, right. Yeah. And as soon as you learn it, it's changed. Or there's something new. All right. We've got several questions. Let's go through them, or as many as we can. From Anonymous: I use agents all the time, but to keep API costs down, they usually revert to deterministic, rule-based code like rigid string matching. We're still trapped in a human bottleneck because we have to manually guide their algorithmic reasoning. How can we fully automate this algorithm selection step?
All right, I'm going to read that question myself to make sure I answer it. And by the way, Stuart Johnson, I see you have a raised hand, but we're using the Q&A feature in the bottom right corner to submit the questions so Adnan can curate them. So if you could submit your question, thank you. I use agents all the time, but to keep API costs down, they usually revert to deterministic rule-based code like rigid string matching. We're still a human bottleneck because we have to manually guide their Anonymous, I am not exactly sure of the question you're asking. My first reply to that would be, first of all, don't use agents when you don't need to. Anytime a lower level explicit deterministic method will give you 100% of what you want, it's probably going to be better, more cost-effective, quicker, easier to debug, etc. As we develop higher level analytics capabilities up to now, including data-driven methods like machine learning, they are much more powerful. They are more computationally expensive. And with machine learning methods, they are probabilistic as opposed to deterministic. So I'm still always a fan of when something can be made deterministic and you can use a more straightforward, lower computational intensity, higher predictable method, use that. The agents give you capability when there is some level of ambiguity. It's unstructured data. A situation is going to be seen that was not in the training data and not predictable by an explicit method. And you must do a inference of some type that is similar to what a human would have to do. Then you use an agent for it. And still trapped in the human bottleneck because you have to manually guide the algorithmic reasoning. I'm not sure what you meant by that sentence, but I would say if you're still trapped in a human bottleneck, then it's because you don't have, you're trying to use an agent for something that you can't yet trust it to do. And that could be a couple of things. One, that you trust it 99% of the time, but the 1% has terrible ramifications if it's wrong, and you still want humans in the loop for those kinds of situations. Or maybe it's not that the ramifications are high, but the accuracy level is small. So, or is not great enough. So it's right 80% of the time or something. And so in that case, small error, the impact of small errors compounds over time. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how to answer that and say, how can we fully automate this algorithmic selection step until we have, models that are as good or better than human brains at an infinite variety of tasks. And we're good and better all the time, but we're not quite at that point.
Yeah, and sometimes, Jay, if I might add to that, instead of having the LLM sort of query the data, I ask it to create the SQL query if it's in a SQL database. That'll help me give a more robust answer that I can then reproduce. So that might be one way. Again, not applicable to everyone.
A friend of mine who uses generative AI every single day, all day long, still says if the problem requires a spreadsheet, use a spreadsheet. Don't use a generative AI tool to be a spreadsheet. Now, if the generative AI tool needs to open a spreadsheet and read something out of it, that's one thing. But if the entire workflow is a spreadsheet, just use the spreadsheet.
Okay. Another anonymous person complained that their Gemini credits flew by even before they had a chance to use it, and they want to know if they've got if we've got a spare coupon or a discount. Unfortunately, I don't know if we do.
We don't. One of the things that I would love to do for this community in the future is figure out a way for us to have coupons for credits. Have not figured that out yet. I hope we figure it out by the end of the year. In fact, I hope we figure it out by the SC26 conference so that people who come to our workshop there, we can do that for. I do think it's relatively easy to go online and get new credits though, usually in $300 amounts. So even yesterday I was checking, it was pretty straightforward to create a new project and get $300 in credits. Whether you're a startup, a researcher, or I did find one way, just anyone could do it. So I think you'll be able to get some more credits for that. I'm not sure why your credits were limited to 1 month trial for GEAP. I wasn't aware that they were limited to 1 month, but no, that's not true. I did see an example yesterday where something was a 30-day trial. So yeah.
All right, so we've got a few more questions. Let's go through that. So Jerry is asking, he's been working on deploying GE using Terraform, and I find that the workspace and the OAuth integration is not when building data stores. Is Google working on this issue? Jerry, yeah, I'm not quite sure I really understand your question. Would you mind connecting with us offline? And I'd be happy to understand your problem and suggest a solution.
Yeah, Jerry, if you send email to gcacc@google.com, we will look for an answer for that. Speaking of which, I see, hold on 1 second. Hey, Google, stop. That's the bad thing about having a Google device in your home.
Okay, next question from Ashish is, what features are featured to monitor and optimize token cost, and what features are available for agent chargebacks to business?
That is probably a longer answer than I can give right here. But if you send email to gcacc@google.com, I can answer that. Also, we will answer that in October for everyone. Of course, the answers may have changed by then, but as we teach our first online workshop that people asked for a week or two ago in GCACC, we're going to start creating online workshops. We can't get any delivered by August or September, but probably by mid-October. We can also talk about it in person if you come to the early October workshop that we're holding in Boston. Date's still TBD, but it'll be the first or second week in Boston. But if you send us email, we'll get you an answer for that one as well.
All right, we've got a really interesting question from Unmesh. And as a SaaS provider, how do we get a handle on the cost of the agents platform? For example, for compute, it's easy to understand what our costs are when quoting a price, right?
Unmesh, that is a great question, and my best answer currently is experience, and it's related to the previous enter and tracking tokens used. But one thing everybody should remember, and I didn't make this point in the beginning of the presentation, but I'll make it now. All these LLMs are ingesting tokens, all your prompts, and everything we tell you to do in prompts about being a scientist, being technical, using business logic, being precise, spelling everything out in your prompt so that it knows personas, task, format, etc. Those are all tokens that it's ingesting. And there's a charge for every token ingested, a charge for every token put out, generated. And in agents, there are, of course, tokens behind the scenes as agents are talking to tools and agents are talking to agents. So an agentic system can generate a huge number of tokens from a seemingly straightforward prompt, resulting in a seemingly straightforward output. Now, the good news is tokens are very, very, very inexpensive. I don't have our current price in front of me. I looked at it a few days ago, and I'm afraid I'll get the number of zeros wrong after the decimal point. They are very, very inexpensive. And I believe our token cost is the best among the public cloud providers. Most days when I have checked for comparison, and for the AI model providers, it is. So you can get a tremendous number of tokens at a reasonable cost, but how many it uses is part of the optimization section of GEAP that we'll talk about next time. But your best bet is probably going to be experience and using those tools to monitor how many tokens your agentic systems are using and getting a feel for, oh, if I create this other agentic system, it's kind of similar to that one that I created that was using about 20,000 tokens per interaction. So this one's probably going to be in the 10 to 30,000 tokens as well. Again, remember, you can reduce the number of tokens used by using Flash models instead of Pro models. You'll get faster results, you'll use fewer tokens, and you can test Pro versus Flash to see if your agents on what they're operating on are giving you equivalent answers as well.
All right.
Long answer to a short question, sorry.
All right. Thank you very much, Jay. I think it's time for us to wrap up.